that you can't expect this team to do the expected. That's what I'm saying. Like beating Burnley, Wolves, and Leeds would be expecting us to do the expected, and we have not proven to be that team.
A good team will recycle. You know, like Real Madrid gets rid of Casemiro before it's too late. You get what I'm saying? Like, you want to recycle before it's too late.
He did look to leave. He did leverage that into a new contract. He did put his own release clause in there at his request, not at the club's request, which is not even that high.
What's up, YouTube? Thank you for joining us once again for another Three Devils podcast episode. I've got Andy here. I have James here. All three Devils are here, and we are excited because we just had a crazy game against Bournemouth just 2 days ago, and that's the first thing we want to talk about. It ended 4-4. It was chaotic. It was exciting. There were ups. There were downs. We're happy about a lot of things, and there's some things that maybe concern us. We're going to talk about that game in deep, and we've got other topics to cover later. We're going to start with the game first, and all three of us have watched the game more than once, and I'm sure we've got some things to say. Andy, let's start with you. Tell me a little bit about the game.
Yeah, it was one of the more exciting games, let's say. Definitely wasn't bored during any minute of it. I'm sure for the neutral, it was game of the season. For the United fan, it was game of the first half, right? Because the first half had like the most electric football. I think the thing that stood out to me most was so many people in during my watch along. I know James did his watch along as well. We were all lamenting the chances that we missed. Right, the chances we created, so many chances. Like Mbeumo at one point should have had a first half hat trick, right? With some of the chances that he had, and I don't really blame any specific person for missing their chances, but I'm also like, at some point we're just gonna have to be, you know, the Aston Villas of the world that scored the 0.02 xG long shots from outside the box, right? Why are we consistently getting into the box, creating these good chances and not finishing our dinner? So it was a great watch, but also frustrating because we missed our chances.
Yeah, I think it was probably the best first half we've seen under Amorim in general. Maybe the best first half of football we've seen in years, like years and years, honestly, from the overall performance of it. The ability to sustain the attacks as well. There was some really, really good pressing in that first half, some really good counter pressing, some really good build up. You know, it was so many variations. I think that was the key, right? It wasn't just a long ball. It wasn't just one way of getting in. It was, we were building up from the back. We were going long. We were hitting crosses properly. There was every kind of attack. Fast transitions, 1 minute in. Probably should have scored from Ahmad to Mbeumo 1 minute into the game. But then we're getting good crosses and we end up scoring off a cross later, and we have set piece. Every possible way you could attack in football was happening in that first 45 minutes. And I think that's what made it important, is that it's not transition FC only, you know. And it was like, once Bournemouth were settled in their defense at certain points, we were still able to create chances. We were still able to get shots on target. We were still able to dominate play. When they pressed us, we didn't just go over the top and lose it. We passed through them quite a few times, and there was a lot of variation there. So in that sense, that's why I think it was one of the most exciting games we've seen. But at the same time, you can also see this is what happens to this club and this team when they go for it, you know, that what everybody wanted. Go for it, you know, go full on. That's what you get. 4-4.
Yeah, exactly. I felt the same way. I felt like, oh my God, we're playing amazing. We're attacking. Why are we leaking goals? These goals need to stop. You know, I was watching it live for the first time was a different feeling than watching it again the second or third time. The first time watching it was like, what is happening? Why is it up and down, up and down? Why can't we keep the lead? You know, and watching it the second and third time, you start to see all these little nuances, these things that we're doing differently within the same patterns, within the same spaces that Ruben likes to attack. He likes to attack I always talk about the zone 16 and 18. We attack those zones, but we play to our players' strengths a little bit better than we have in under Ruben Amorim before. We allowed people like Diogo Dalot to come in off his right foot and take his crosses instead of making him go down the end line and try the cutback pass or the cross with his left foot and stuff like that. There were even more than that. I think, Andy, you're muted there. There were more. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. What were you
Yeah,
saying?
so apparently they've been working on with Diallo on his passing and crossing in training. This was news that came out. Which again, why have we not been doing that for the last 8 years that he's been at the club, right? Or maybe since when he was a kid in the youth academy. But Rishi actually made a joke yesterday where he was like, "Can we get more of these coaches? Because we have a lot of players that could use that." Right. But yeah, I think that's paying full benefit, right? And I think Semeex will be the happiest person to see Diallo put in a cross. Thoughts?
Yeah, of course, 100%, man. 100%. I have no animosity towards any single player. I just want my players to execute better or leave. And I think that's just, if you're in business, that's how you would think about any employee. So just because we're talking about sports, it doesn't mean we should speak of it differently. Like if you're an employee of a company, either perform or go, right? Be replaced by someone who is going to perform. I see it the same way, and I am in sports. And I see it the exact same way. If you can't do what is required of you, then you're not actually needed. And of course, if somebody works on something and actually pulls off what is required of them, you actually appreciate that person even more, right? Because you know that they put in the time to accomplish that thing. It didn't just happen by fluke or luck. So it was wonderful to see Diallo perform the way it is. And I got to give it up to Diallo because this is about 2 or 3 games in a row now where he's just gotten incrementally better. And I also have to give some praise to Ruben Amorim for changing a couple of things that actually brings out the strengths in some of our players. And I will say that maybe this is what he was talking about a long time ago when he said, we first have to get our patterns right and our fundamentals right, and then we're going to make changes. Maybe he's now starting to implement changes. And I know me and James were talking about it earlier off camera that Ruben is starting to come into his own.
Yeah, I think he's definitely evolving, like you said, and that's the really frustrating part. If you ever watched him from Sporting and the football he actually played back then, and over the years as well, it made for the dialogue and the narrative around Ruben to be kind of irritating because you would know that what we saw for a while here, that's not like end game Ruben Amorim, if you look at it in that sense, not even close. It actually barely even reflects what his system is supposed to look like. The idea that it's all one way type of football or something like that is very strange. And what you're seeing now and what we saw against Bournemouth was the closest thing to his football at Sporting, where he took it, okay, we've got the basics. He talked about how center backs need to control the ball more. Well, we saw Heaven, despite some of the defensive things, being way more brave with the ball in that first half, especially driving it forward, dribbling players. He'd get pressed, fake one way, turn, drive up the pitch, not be scared to do those kinds of things. How that broke the press. That's what he needs from players, but you have to have a baseline to work off of to get there. At its peak, it's supposed to look like Jurgen Klopp's football, actually, in terms of how it attacks in its fast transitions through the wide areas often, but then really quick attacks. But it doesn't mean you can't do other things. And I think that's what we saw that first half. You could go watch one of Klopp's games in his first season. It would have looked like that. When they bought all the forwards before they sorted the defense out, it would have looked like the same thing. That's what it's supposed to be like, and that's where it's heading, and that's why you really need time. But it's also the whole point of getting a manager with a system and making them stick to it as the reason you hired them is that it's going to go through this phased process because they're not coming into a team and saying, I'll just play the way these players fit. He's saying, I got to teach them something brand new first, and then we're going to start evolving them. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing more stuff like Diallo is a good example because we've all been heavily critical of Diogo Diallo doing things he's not done before. That's important.
Right.
And that's
Right.
kind of a sign.
And I would add to that Jurgen Klopp analogy that our rest defense and our counter pressing in that first half actually does remind of Jurgen Klopp. We didn't give him any room to breathe. Andy, I want to ask you, what was your favorite pattern of play in that game? Or if you can, there's a lot to pick out from. There was so many good moments in that game. What was one of, a pattern of play that stands out to you from that game?
I just want to add quickly to what James was talking about just there before I go into that. And I want to make this clear to everybody that's watching, right? Not only is Ruben not going to play the exact same system he played at Sporting? At 40 years old as a coach, he's allowed to learn things and add completely new things that we haven't seen before, because this is a new league, right? And that's not to say some other channels that are going to come out there and say, oh, he's changed his system now because I called him and told him to do so, or some bullshit like that, right? This is more to do with him looking at his players, him looking at the natural progression of where we should be, and identifying this is the time to change it, right? And I think Laurie Whitwell did a piece after the Wolves game. He released this, that before the Wolves game, Amorim had a conversation with the team and told them, like, hey guys, I think a change is coming, right, in terms of the system. And then he implemented that change in the Bournemouth game. So I just want to say, a year in, Amorim is picking the right time to make a change because the team is getting used to the system a little bit, but we're also seeing a lot of the pains, which we'll talk throughout the rest of the video. Now, Semeex, for your question about best pattern of the or play of the night, for me it was Luke Shaw stepping out of the defense of left center back, and Diallo actually dropping deeper. And this was my favorite play of the night because I called it in the preview, because I said essentially Bournemouth is a team that love pressing high. They have the lowest passes per defensive action in the league, which means they are the best high pressing team in the league. And when you're playing against a high pressing team, if you get them to overcommit their pressing numbers, that leaves a lot more space in behind once you play through them, right? And because of Aiden Heaven being a really good passer, in that same play when Shaw stepped up forward, Heaven had to make a pass that was almost like 30 yards to his left to get to Diallo, and that created more room for Shaw. It created more room for Mount, and it allowed us to play the ball through the middle. So if you guys want to go watch that play back, it's in the first like 15 minutes or something, or maybe first 20 minutes. That was my favorite play of the night.
James, what was your favorite play of the night?
It was probably the first minute. I've spent a lot of time talking about this on my channel over the course of the season. Swing the ball to the right through the build-up, suck in the defense, send it long on the other side into the channel where you get in that 2-on-1 with Ahmad and Mbumo. It's practically unstoppable. If a team wants to press you, they have to overload one side. They have to commit too many men. So if you can pull it back out to the other side and swing it that way, it's always going to be open against teams that want to press you. Against teams that don't press you, we've seen that in some of the recent weeks. They can't do it as much, so you need a bit more variation. But anytime someone presses you, that ball's going to be there. That play is going to be there. And if they just look for it, they'll find open passes all the time. Should have led to a goal in the first minute, talking about missing chances earlier. Should have led to a goal at like 1 minute, 27 seconds or whatever it was.
If Ahmad's pass was a little bit better, then Mbumo doesn't go wide and he gets a shot off.
Yeah, he's right in, and he, maybe he wouldn't have scored given his game, but it would have at least been a great opportunity. But yeah, that was my favorite one because it's so repeatable. And we should be able to see it every single week if we are being pressed.
100%, I agree. It is very repeatable. We try it every single week, that's for sure. But sometimes just the passes are not as sharp or not fast enough to get past the front line.
Semeex, what was your favorite play?
Yeah, for me, I actually, both of you guys picked the two plays that jump in my head first, and both those plays are in my tactical breakdown video. And I have a lot to say about the Luke Shaw one, but I'm just going to leave that for my tactical breakdown video. So go watch that later if you're watching this. But so I'm going to go with maybe something more off the ball, defensive side. Around the 20th minute, I think the 21st minute, you see us pressing, and you see Mason Mount starting the press or really pressing hard on centrally on one of the Bournemouth players. I'm really bad with names, so I don't remember. Tavernier, there you go. He's pressing really hard on Tavernier. Tavernier has to get rid of the ball. Mason Mount almost knocks him over. He gets rid of the ball, and then Bruno continues the press, and then you even have Cunha joining in, and Bruno and Cunha just smother the guy, get the ball off of him. Bruno gives the ball to Cunha. Cunha dribbles against three to then find his way into the box and take a shot, which leads to a corner. The intensity in that play and how we had one player jump and then the next player jump and another player actually help him double team when we were pressing is exactly why I want a different center midfielder. And I know I'm probably making this about Casemiro, and I shouldn't. But I do want a different central midfielder who's got
Make it
quicker
more about
legs.
Casemiro. Make it more about Casemiro.
Thank you, James. I agree, man, because that there are some weaknesses that just jump out at you, and you're like, man, if we had one more set of legs that was even faster than Bruno and Cunha, because Bruno and Cunha aren't that fast. If we had another set of legs just behind them that was even faster than Bruno and Cunha, in case that press didn't work, you have a Baleba jumping, and then it's like, dude, how are you going to get past all these guys jumping if they play with that intensity? And that's why intensity is so important in this kind of system. And we have to remember, to the guys who've been coming out in the last weeks and saying that Ruben Amorim's system is too intense, it's unsustainable, people get tired. That's why we have 5 substitutions. If we use them correctly, sure, it won't be as good as it was in the first half, but there's no reason to leak goals the way we've been leaking goals. You can't tell me that the system
also
is too
Semeex, the question about, because somebody on one of my live streams after the game was like, Bournemouth doesn't have better players than us, then how are they staying in the game? They don't have better players, but they have younger players, right?
Mm-hmm.
That Alex Scott in midfield, he's like, came out of the womb like 4 days ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, you compare that to these unks. Those guys are like 64 years old in midfield, right? So, and this is the question, like, why do we always run out of gas? And of course, I've already covered this on my channel. We run out of gas because that's all the gas we have, right? And we have to, when you look at this team last season, we were conceding all the goals we conceded in that Bournemouth game, but we weren't scoring all the goals that we scored in the Bournemouth game, right? So everyone that says, instead of being so intense for 30 minutes, why don't we just stretch it out with slightly less intensity over the full first half? It's because we don't score any goals then. We're just a shit, mediocre team if we don't have that intensity. And we don't have other players on the bench, unfortunately, that can bring that same intensity for a longer time, even if they're younger. So everyone that's looking at Menu and Ugarte, we're just not going to have that same quality in that first half if we played those 2 guys instead of Bruno and Casemiro. So we've got a Frankenstein monster of a squad. That's what I always like to say. And we just this is the best we can do.
So, James, talking about the squad, Andy brought up the squad. We're talking about the Frankenstein monster of the squad. Talking about the squad in that game, who do you feel like raises the floor? We already talked about Diogo Dalot, and we know that he's doing better. But other than Diogo Dalot, who do you feel like raised their game? But I have to, and I know we want to stay positive, but I have to bring this up because as a coach, the thing that I have to focus on every day at work is making players' weaknesses better. So you got to tell me, after you tell me who raised their game, who maybe dropped their game.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that Cunha and Mount are the closest that I can think of in terms of raising the floor of the way they perform, because even when they're not outputting goals, they add so much to the team by way of the performance, the movements, the dropping in, the carrying. So many of the basics are there that you know that they're helping you get up the pitch, press the opposition, get the ball into the areas you want to get it to, and keep it. And then I would say alternatively Mbeumo, because unfortunately it's just been a rough few games for him recently. And he's kind of like that lightning where if he's hitting, we could score 7 to 10 goals. Honestly, it's that crazy with the amount of chances he finds himself at the end of. I think Andy usually does the stats on this, but I know without getting into the specifics, Mbeumo's already gotten, I think, more than half. I think about 70 to 80% of his non-penalty expected goals that he had at Brentford last year. You know, he should be on a lot more goals, and he will if he starts finding the net a little bit more. He can be a prolific 20, 25 goal scorer because he's so good at getting into the right spaces, and he's like that game breaker, and I think that every team needs that. You look at like Cole Palmer and what he's done in terms of like elevating Chelsea oftentimes above where they maybe should have been when he was really on it in terms of scoring. That's him. That can be Mbeumo for us. He can be that guy, but right now he's off it. And I think that difference between him hitting the ceiling of what he can do and being off his game is worth points every single week. He can win us games that we're not good in, and he can make us run away with games we should run away with so that it's not so close. So we really need him to kick on for sure.
So obviously, I'm not going to disagree with anything James said, but the game was so good and so bad that we can have, we can talk about all 10 outfield players and Lomans actually because there's some things he did too. I'll say raise the floor. I think Aiden Heaven, man. I think Aiden Heaven in build up raised the floor, and Aiden Heaven in defense dropped the ceiling. Right. So that's a really good one to talk about because just like we have two unks in midfield, we have two babies in defense, right? In Euro and Heaven. And you really saw that because a lot of the times when Bournemouth were kind of all the chances they scored from, it seemed like our defense was escorting them from midfield into our own box, right? They were just kind of running with them. There was nobody that was brave enough to step out of defense and put a tackle in. And what I noticed was with the three at the back, you have the two spaces in between the two center backs, right? And I still feel like our center backs are hesitating on who has to go into that space when somebody comes in between the two center backs. You know what I mean? So the ball was coming from midfield. It was going past our midfield too easily, whether it was Mainu for the last goal, for example, or it was Casemiro before that. As soon as the ball passed the midfield, the defense was like, oh, I'm just going to wait. I'm going to do my best Virgil van Dijk impression and keep tracking back instead of putting a tackle in, right? And I think that was the problem. So Heaven, for me, on the ball, looks like champagne, right? Looks like even doing some things better than Euro is. But defensively, he needs to learn when he needs to just dive in and put the tackle in. At some point, you need to put the tackle in. You can't just give them that much space.
Yeah, for me, raise the floor was Mason Mount, Cunha, and Amad Diallo. I was so happy with all three of them. And watching the game over again, I actually came to appreciate Cunha even more. I was like, this is the guy they said he walks a lot. And he was helping on defense. He was always running forward in transition. I don't think he ever walked when he should have been running, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then Mason Mount, it was Mason Mount at his best, in my opinion. The workhorse we need. And Amad Diallo is just becoming more of this dribbler, something different that Mason Mount doesn't offer on the other side, which is fine because I like that everybody has different characteristics and opposing teams have to deal with what we might pull out of our bag, right?
Also, Semeex, did you think Cunha was releasing the ball at a good time?
Better. I'm going to say better. But there are still moments where I'm like, dude, there's three people in front of you. Do you really need to try and dribble right now? Exactly. But definitely better. We're moving in a better direction.
But you see how much difference it makes because he's the guy that carries so much of the load. Like we look to him so much to get us out of tough situations. And even in that game, like you said, he didn't do it perfectly, but we look so much better from an attacking sense because the attack stopped breaking down.
Yeah, he put in a cross for Mbeumo that was like on a plate. It could have been, one of the best goals that we've scored this season.
That was the scissor kick from Mbeumo, right? That went above the net.
Yeah, but that cross was crazy.
That cross was awesome. It was amazing. From the spot on the field where he put that cross in from, that's not easy to get that accurate. And he whipped it in really nice. It's like a Beckham whip on that.
That's like a Kevin De Bruyne, Reece James type of cross from that area. The early cross from the edge of the box.
I'll be honest, I didn't know he had it in his bag. I didn't know Cunha had that kind of cross in his bag. But seeing it, now I want to see it more, right? And as for like dropping the ceiling, I'm going to agree with you guys. The center backs let me down, especially Lenny Yoro's body shape on one of the goals where I'm like, what's he doing there? And even, we just talked about the young center backs, but I'll even say Licha on the last goal was just a little too nonchalant until it was too late. And then obviously Mbeumo, which we already talked about. Mbeumo was just off. He's been off. But I have like no concern about Mbeumo. I feel like his character, his mentality, he just needs to play through the rough patch and he'll find his form again.
I think the Cameroon not qualifying for the World Cup has hit him pretty hard. Since then, he's been off it in a United shirt as well.
The AFCON distraction as well coming up maybe is just
AFCON, dude. There's people doing voodoo and stuff like that.
And the situation over there in Cameroon is crazy. They got 2 coaches, 2 squads, 2 captains. Nobody knows what the hell's going on over there. So
whichever coach wants Onana and his team is the one I'm backing. Okay, because that means this guy comes back home quicker.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. I'm like, why? Why does he care if Onana plays?
What do you mean, dude? There's going to be no goalkeeper and they're going to have an extra midfielder because of Onana.
Okay. I think we're done talking about the Bournemouth game because I want to move on. I've got other topics I want to cover in this episode, and one of them obviously is something both of you guys have talked about on your channel. I've never gotten a chance to talk about it yet, but we'll keep this short. The Bruno Fernandes interview. I know a lot of people have already talked about it. The Bruno Fernandes interview. My 2 cents on this is that I just feel like it's at the wrong time. This is something you talk about after you leave a club, not while you're still at a club. And I feel like while the team is actually improving and taking steps forward and everything's going in the right direction, the last thing I think we needed was our captain to come out with these kind of quotes and these kind of things.
But this happened in November, though, right? This is just Canal just released the quotes now.
Just a couple.
The interview actually happened in November. Yeah,
sure, but it's 2 weeks ago. Like it's not. 2 weeks ago. I would still say this is the wrong time, right? I wouldn't say like now's any different than 2 weeks ago. It's still mid-season, and it gives me vibes of I want to leave when I know that that's not the case. It just doesn't make sense that that's the vibes if he's playing the way he was playing in the Bournemouth game, because he was good in the Bournemouth game. He was really good in the Bournemouth.
Semeex, can I give my thoughts here before we go to the transfer expert? Because I feel like I would rather have him refute what I have to say.
That's right. Yeah.
Then listen to the facts first, and then
That's why I spoke. I'll be honest with you. That's why I was like, I'm going to give my 2 cents in before James locks it down.
Yeah. So for me, this reeks of I know I'm going to be out in the summer, so I'm going to get some information out before I'm going to be gone. Because Ineos, the background of Ineos, how they've become this behemoth, how Jim Ratcliffe's made all his money, is private equity, right? And if you guys know anything about private equity, they're the most ruthless, most emotionless vultures. This is the image that they have in the business, right? In the VC space, private equity space, VC people are more like dreamers. They're like giving you the money and being like, go build, the next unicorn, the next $1 trillion company. Private equity are looking at struggling businesses. They come in, they institute harsh changes, austerity measures, and then they try to, find their exit, right? Sell on to the next guy and move on. So Ineos, I don't know if they want to sell and move on, but they very much want to do the austerity stuff. They fired the lunch lady, fired the gym guy, whatever, right? They did all those things. Now they're looking at the highest wages in the team that don't make sense. So Casemiro, Maguire, Bruno, all three of them, I think, are going to be out the door this summer just because of the wage. And also Bruno's going to fetch us some money from Saudi. Maybe not 100 million, but maybe 50, 60 million. And I think Bruno's looked at the De Gea's of the world, the Ander Herreras of the world, and seen how people that fight for the badge get treated by the club. They don't get a farewell. They don't get their word in edgewise. So I think he's just gone out and said, you know what, I'm going to be out the door anyways. I'm going to throw the leadership down, under the bus, not the players and not the club.
I think there's some of that, but I think he's playing the victim a little bit much there. I mean, because right now he's talking about, oh, I'm so sad about how I didn't value. But let's back up 1 second, Bruno, because last summer you went off. Your agent was on a world tour, Barcelona, Bayern, all over the place. 2024, looking for moves, looking for somewhere to go to win trophies. And here's the thing, that's okay. I want to make that very clear. It's all good. If Bruno had left either summer, I don't think any United fan would sit there and go, what the hell, you're abandoning us. You know what I mean? He's given a lot for this club during a very dark time. And he's been a great player during a time when we really needed him. And when, the club has been in disarray. We know that. The club has been in utter chaos for such a long time. It's finally, I know it seems chaotic now, but it's kind of coming out of the chaos. Sometimes it sounds messy while that's happening. But he's been through the worst of it, and nobody could say he hasn't done a job for United or hasn't been a great servant of the club. So nobody would care if he left, but he did look to leave. He did leverage that into a new contract. He did put his own release clause in there at his request, not at the club's request, which is not even that high. 58 million or something for a player of Bruno's quality is pretty low, to be honest. So that he had a route out in order to leave if he wanted to. At that point, they fully gave him the choice. You're totally correct, though, Andy, in that obviously I think it's clear that from Ineos' perspective, they would not have minded selling Bruno and taking the money. They probably preferred it, But I do believe that out of respect for him and what he's done, and also because Ruben Amorim wanted him to stay because he did not feel he had the midfielders
Yeah.
right
Also,
now to
he's
work.
not a dud. He's not a
No,
dud,
it's
right?
not like he doesn't bring anything to the table, you know? Like, they were probably thinking, look, we'd rather sell him and use the money to fund the team. We just finished 13th. We got to rebuild this whole team. And you could
15th.
argue in
15th. Yeah, I was like 13th.
Yeah, excuse me, 13th was too optimistic. We just finished 15th. We've got no Europe. The money's tight. You can definitely make the argument that in the long term, reinvesting 100 million in profit probably would have been better to speed up the overall rebuild. Not saying it's better to lose Bruno, but it is in the long term, gives you a lot of money to work with. We probably could have got 2 midfielders in this summer if we'd done that. But they, again, out of respect for him, for Amorim's desires, things like that, they weren't going to push him out the door. They were going to leave it all
But Semeex, you know what the crazy thing is? Bruno Fernandes, as we speak, has the second highest goals and assists combined in the league. Not in our team, not in the top
Makes
6
sense.
teams. Like Haaland has the highest goals and assists at 20. Bruno's at the second at 12. And this is from the midfield position. So like he's giving us a lot, right? Even with all this noise, like if you look at it, like where would we be even this season without Bruno?
Yeah, that's what makes it such a tough conversation, because I think anybody who knows what I've said on our last episode of our podcast, where I said, hey, man, if we're going to do a rebuild, let's actually rebuild and not just remodel the kitchen. It's hard because Bruno is our best player, but I also do believe in knocking the whole house down and rebuilding from the bottom up. Like, I understand that he's our best player and he's got those numbers that you speak of, but to be honest with you, I would much rather if those numbers were spread out into the squad as opposed to this one player having all this, because he's also one of our aging players. And again, people are going to misinterpret everything I say, but I can tell from James's nods that he understands exactly what I'm trying to get at. I don't want someone to be like, I'm scoring all the goals and getting all the assists. I want that spread out. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's what you need to make this system work in the Premier League. We don't have a Gyökeres in Sporting Lisbon in the Portuguese league where he could score 50 goals or whatever. First of all, we don't have that guy. Hopefully Šeško will become somebody like that who's scoring 40 goals a season, sure. But right now we need that spread out. And sometimes because Bruno's so heavily relied upon, that's not even an option, right? Because if Bruno doesn't have those numbers you're talking about, Andy, we're not even in 6th place, right? But maybe if it's someone else, which actually helps move the ball along and actually, set the tempo better, maybe we do get those numbers spread. Maybe Mount gets 2 extra assists, Cunha gets 2 extra goals. You know what I mean? And that's the way I have to think.
Semeex, if I may though, I hear your point in terms of just in general spreading the quality around the squad so that it's not so concentrated within one player, which it is right now. I think Bruno would sit there and argue, I've created 5 chances in that game and only gotten 1 assist, right? So maybe if Mbeumo could finish his chances or Cunha could finish his chances, we wouldn't have that problem of everything going through me too much, right? And it's not like Bruno has 10 goals and 2 assists. He's got 5 goals and 7 assists. So from an assist perspective, he's doing everything he should do. And arguably, if he doesn't miss his 2 penalties, he has 7 goals and 7 assists, right? So you're looking at a player who, for me, is doing his job, but we still have some players who are not up to the task yet, right? Like Cunha, for example, he has 2 goals and 1 assist, man. He should have as many goals as Mbeumo right now, if he could finish his chances.
I would make the argument in alignment with Semeex here, but like, it's true. When Bruno's bad, though, we lose every single time.
Correct. Every time.
game.
There's no, exactly, 100%.
It's the same about Casemiro, though.
But he's the most influential player in the team. Everything runs through him, and he has those stats. But it's true. Like, if you look at this season, if Bruno has a good game, we'll win. If Bruno has a bad game, we'll lose. You can't say that about anybody else. We've won games where other players have performed badly. We've won games with Mbeumo performing badly. We've won games with Cunha performing badly.
We've won games with Casemiro on the bench.
Yeah, it's too focused with Bruno. Everything's goes through him. And again, I think it's less about him It's more like I tried to say it in this way. The team, because of how influential he is, they're too reliant on him to do it.
Exactly.
When you're right in that Cunha needs to step up. The other players need to step up. Other guys need to step up. But whenever like the chips get down and it gets tough, it's like it's always running through Bruno to fix it. And that's not necessarily a good thing. If he's on the top of his game, then he's going to fix it. But if he's off that game, it's not going to work. We've seen it with...
But that doesn't sound like a Bruno problem. It sounds like we're asking too much of Bruno because the other players are not stepping up. That's the point I'm trying to make.
I think it's chicken or the egg, though, because it's been 7 years.
If Cunha steps up
100%.
more, if Mbeumo steps up more, and listen, we can talk about the past all we want. We'll be here till Sunday, right? But this season, when you're looking at it, we purchased 3 attackers that are supposed to be Premier League proven. Maybe not Šeško, but at least 2 attackers, right? Mbeumo and Cunha. That should be driving a lot more influence, a lot more work on the team so that Bruno has to do less. When you watch Bruno with Portugal, it's not Bruno or die, right? Because there's a lot more quality around him. There's people running the midfield behind him, etc. He's just in the final third doing the creating. But in the United team, we're reliant on him way too much. That's why it's Bruno or die, right? So I'm not disagreeing with you guys, but I'm also saying it's not Bruno's fault that's how we are.
But is he not 32 years old? How much longer do you want to lean on him?
He's 31.
Like 31. Okay, he'll be 32 next season. Are we? What's your? Do you think that Bruno reaches a stage where he's a bench player for us because he's 33, or do you think that maybe it's time to? A good team will recycle. You know, like Real Madrid gets rid of Casemiro before it's too late. You get what I'm saying? Like, you want to recycle before it's too late. You don't... Sir Alex didn't wait, well, except for Scholes and Giggs, but other than Scholes and Giggs, Sir Alex wouldn't wait until someone is, like, completely broken or done before he recycled and got someone else new. Again, me and James aren't saying that Bruno's a bad player. We're just saying that there's too many pros now to maybe getting rid of him, as opposed to the one con, which is... he's our best player, and if he's, you know, if everything goes through him and he's having a good game, we win games. Yeah, but if he's having a bad game, we can't move on from this idea of give Bruno the ball, everybody run off that, and then hopefully he'll find you, because that's what it looks like way too often when we're desperate for a goal. When we're desperate for a goal, it's give Bruno the ball, everybody run, and let's see if he can find you.
Can I ask you? Let me take you back to. Summer of 2021 or 2022 when we purchased Jadon Sancho. Okay? Jadon Sancho, at I think a year before we purchased him, was second in Europe for assists in the last like 3 years or something like that. He had more assists than Messi in a 2-year span or something crazy like that. When we purchased Jadon Sancho, I think a lot of us were excited. You know, Mark Goldbridge on his channel was doing the 90% club and this and that. We thought he was going to fix our right wing, and we thought he was going to take a lot of the creative burden off of Bruno. I don't want to remind anybody how that ended up playing out. My point is, we look at this midfield, and we're saying, oh, let's go get Baleba, Anderson, Wharton, and let's let Bruno go, let's let Casemiro go, and it's going to fix all our problems. Guys, transfers don't work as a guarantee. We can bring in all the players that we want, and we can say, let's move on from Bruno, and let's break the house down, but the new house could be shit. So let's remember that
brings us back to the question, how much longer? He's 31. He's going to be 32. My
point was about this season. Our squad is nowhere near good enough
But we're not getting rid of him this season. That's not what me and James are saying. No, neither me or James are saying let's get rid of him in January. We're saying continue the rebuild when it's time to continue the rebuild. I don't actually. That's
which we're on the same page
point.
with. We're talking generally about like how the fan base feels, right? Because everyone in the fan base, me included, I would have taken the money in the summer because I was feeling hopeless about this team. So it's more of a general conversation, not what you guys are saying. I'm just saying that I think the whole perspective with Bruno, it's so hard to judge him because he's easy to hate and he's also easy to love. Right, in terms of what he gives you on the team, and that's the concern, is that we get rid of him and there's this sudden void, and how do we not just look like Liverpool after Salah?
But we got to get through that, you know. It's a crutch
because it's coming
right
either
That's
way.
What I'm saying.
Right?
It is. You're right. We are going to be worse when Bruno doesn't play. If
Yes.
Bruno's injured this season, we're going to look worse without him. 100%. It's a guaranteed. We know that. But he's not going to be here forever. And we got to
Right.
move on from that because we have
I'm
to
on the
be
same
a team
page with that. Yeah, I'm on the
it's like
same page
City
with that.
with De Bruyne, right? Like he was as influential, as productive, more so, and more successful than Bruno, but the most similar player to him in the Premier League over the last some years. They struggled without him at first, right? At the same time as obviously Rodri getting injured and all that as well. But they've had to, how do we make up for De Bruyne in the collective in terms of playing? And they're starting to find their place with that this season.
So, James, while the profile of players is very similar, there is no player in the last 10 years of the Premier League that a team has relied on more than Bruno Fernandes.
That's what I'm saying.
City has a lot more quality around him, right?
Yeah.
So City has a lot more quality around them, and they have the ability to go spend like 800 million in 2 windows or something crazy, right? To fix
Yeah,
the
but I
problem.
could
So
also
could
say
we.
there's
So
no
could we if
player
we do it
on
right.
planet Earth that scored as many goals in the last 10 years as Cristiano Ronaldo. Should we go get him? Like, the last 10 years doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the next 10 years. I've already lived through the last 10 years and they sucked.
Guys, okay, so we're on the same page on this topic.
No,
I'm
look,
not
the
saying we should
reality
keep
is
Bruno forever.
we've got to build a collective. We know that. The squad isn't good enough. That's why it's going to look worse without Bruno. It's going to look worse without Bruno. But if we build in the collective, then and have that kind of quality to spread it around the team, that's the way forward. I think everybody knows that we need to do that. But, I do think, Andy, for what you said, I do think Bruno was laying the groundwork for leaving. I think it was pretty obvious with that interview.
Now, what scares me about that, James, and I want both of your opinions here, is because it felt to me like he was laying the groundwork to go to Spain or Italy as opposed to Saudi Arabia, because
that's where he's got the release clause for European clubs from what we know.
That means that there's not much money in it. Like, I know we all talked about, like, I wanted to take the money, but it doesn't seem like there's much money in it, because honestly, they offered him a ton of money last summer. And I think a part of the reason why he didn't go to Saudi Arabia is because he's not really truly convinced about living in Saudi Arabia.
So I think he also looks at it as like his fitness is good enough to be like a Modric at 40. So going to Saudi now is there's no point.
He could for sure
go to
play
Napoli,
in Spain or Italy. Yeah.
Yeah. For another 3-4 years and then go to Saudi, he still makes his bag.
Yeah. Now, but there is money because 60 million, because we've had him long enough, 60 million of profit's a lot. It would be our most profitable sale ever, 60 million. But also it's 300,000 a week when you include the bonuses and things like that, because he hits a lot of the targets, obviously. So you're talking about realistically overall, it unlocks a couple $100 million in spending on players.
Also, the Casemiro wages will be huge.
So you could if Casemiro leaves and Bruno goes on his release clause, you could sign 3-4 players in that midfield easily. You really could. You could rebuild the whole thing.
And I think his amortization is also done to James's point. So it would be not the same, but almost equivalent to a youth player being sold for 60 mil.
Yep, pretty much. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I was like, okay, it's not the 100 million we were all dreaming about, but it's still very, very good for us.
Yeah.
So, guys, since we're talking about, getting rid of Bruno, which, by the way, we started this segment off by me saying I think he's going to go in the summer. In case you guys missed that part.
Good point.
But if he leaves, who are the midfielders that are going to come and give us this spreading of the seed that we just talked about? Because my concern is it's not that, we should continue to be reliant on Bruno. That's not what I'm saying. My concern is the ability of any club realistically to replace Bruno's impact. And let's be honest, Bruno is like our Salah, right? Liverpool are going to struggle to replace Salah's impact even after spending like 500 million or something crazy that they've spent, because it's very difficult. They're once in a generation type players. So how are we going to spread his goals and assists around in the team? Because I'm looking at the left wing back role that needs to be better. I'm looking at Cunha needs to step up. I'm looking at Mbeumo needs some backup to push him right from the bench.
And Sheshko has to come.
Sheshko needs somebody. Then we need a right wing back because Ahmad is our only right wing back. There's nobody else that plays over him. So either Dorgu gets better or we move on from him. Then let's not even go into our center back situation because there's like we have two 19-year-olds and a converted left back playing as our three center backs, right? So what are we going to do that in one summer realistically can fix some of this? And maybe we can go to James with this
Yeah.
question, and then come to Semeex.
Well, this is why moving early for someone like Semenyo in January would make a huge difference, because you're talking about a 5-tool player, literally, like they use an American phrase there, but you're talking about a player who can fit into 5 positions, literally. So you say, hey, we need backup for Mbumo, Semenyo. You need backup for Ahmad, Semenyo. You need an attacker on the left side, Semenyo. You need a backup number 9, also, believe it or not, Semenyo, right? He can do quite literally everything and has. Plays on the left.
How nice was his
right.
finish too, by the way?
Yeah. Clean and simple, which our players could learn from. Just a little roller into the far corner. If we had that in terms of our finishing, we would have scored 7-10 goals in that game. But yeah, Semenyo makes a big difference there. You know, adding goals, assists, but also everywhere in the team, giving us that kind of depth that we need. And then in the midfield, you know, obviously someone like Elliot Anderson, who's an all-round productive player, who would fit right in, who's very good on the ball, off the ball, adds a lot. You know, those would be my starting, you know, to say, hey, how do we round this team out with quality? It would be Semenyo and Anderson would be the first two. After that, obviously, you still need kind of another midfielder, a center back for sure. There's other things we're going to need no matter what. But those would be my starting points to say, hey, this is how we build a well-rounded team in the long term. Those two right there.
Yeah, for me, I want Semenyo, and I'll tell you right now that the best thing I can tell you is that I think there's less than 25 days left before his buyout clause is no longer valid. So, because I think it's only valid till January 10th.
First 10 days, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to find out really soon where that guy's going. I don't see him not going somewhere. It's just too good to be true as a deal in January, and there are a couple of clubs that could use him. I'm just hoping that he wants to come to us, right? Because I don't know if we can offer him the best wages out of some of the clubs that want him.
Also, speaking of goals and assists, because we talked about Bruno being second highest in the league, Semenyo is 4th. So if we go by our last year's strategy of picking the best players out of the teams that are below us, then getting Bournemouth fits that strategy to a T. But anyways, Semeex, continue.
Yeah, and I don't think that we're not going to try. It's too obvious in the press conferences, the way Ruben speaks about him, that we are actually going to try. I think it's going to come down to, like I said, whether or not Semenyo even wants to join us. And I'm telling you right now, I don't think we're going to offer him the best wage package, because I just don't see us operating that way anymore, right? Like, we want the player to prove that he wants to come to us. So either we'll match whatever wage package other teams are offering, or maybe a little less. That's just the gut feeling I get. Maybe James can tell us a little bit more about that.
How close is City to the Semenyo deal?
Certainly, that's want
the
you
one
to
team I'm worried
that
about.
They're going to get him. It like you said, it's going to come down to his choice. And I think that if we didn't feel we were in the race and had a shot at convincing him, we wouldn't be hearing about it right now. You know, we wouldn't be hearing about it at all, especially after the game and things like that. City definitely wants you to believe that. Maybe his agent wants everybody to believe that City are in for him because they pay the biggest wages and they've got the most money and they're chasing a title. And that might be part of his strategy, to leverage the best deal from the clubs of choice out there. But, I think it comes down to him. If I was looking at the football side of it for him, I know it's crazy, but Pep is such a weird manager, not unsuccessful, but such a weird manager. When you're like a pace and power forward, you really got to be careful about going to a Pep team because you could end up, nowhere
playing out wide and
team.
not getting to cut inside. You might end up playing out wide
exactly. You could end up. You look at like Jack Grealish. What a weird thing, his career completely derailed off of being one of the most exciting talents in England, bringing Aston Villa up from nowhere and revitalizing them to ending up, a player who's all about.
He's having more fun at Everton.
He's
doing
great at Everton under Moyes.
Yeah.
Moyes is like bringing the best out of him. He was amazing against us, honestly. So, yeah, I'd be worried. But for Semenyo, I'd be looking at the United team and saying what I said before: 5 positions I could play in. I'm going to be on the pitch doing something at any time, being productive for this team. And that's not necessarily the case at other clubs.
Semeex, do you think with Semenyo, at City, that whole Pep won't play me because I'm a power type of player has changed this season because of how they've adapted their style to be more of like, mid block at times, even low block at times, and play on the counterattack. So is that something that worries you with Semenyo going to City?
It doesn't worry me with Semeex going to City. It obviously does play a role. They are a much more transitional team this last season than they were ever before. Pep himself is a lot more transitional this season than he's ever been, but you could already see those changes starting last season, and you can see that he was planning for this with his summer recruitment. It worries me because honestly, one thing I had going for us was that Bournemouth and Man City historically don't play the same type of football like at all. Right. But now you can say that Pep is starting to play 20% more like transitional and only 70% or 80% positional. But look, in the end, it's going to come down to what does Semenyo want? And I want Semenyo, but I'm not holding my breath. Does that make sense? And that makes the job for our technical directors and for our recruitment team a lot more interesting. They need to have a plan B of what they're going to do with their money. That doesn't mean they go get a Semenyo like for like. Maybe they go, well, instead of spending the money there, we're now going to spend the money on this position and get a left wing back in or something else. Does that make sense? Like, I think James has always said that they're always going to act on opportunities, whether they were like a long-term goal. If they can find an opportunity in January, then they're going to go for it. And Semenyo is one of those. But if that doesn't happen, like there are rumors going on right now about Ruben Neves. Have you guys seen that? Today, I just saw it before we went live. Ruben Neves came out. It's coming out that they're looking for a home for him in January. And that Ruben Amorim supposedly has asked the hierarchy to look into it. I don't know, James. Maybe it's too early for you to have anything on this, but Ruben Neves actually doesn't sound like a bad idea, although I'm nervous about a Saudi league player, someone who's been playing in a Saudi league for I don't know how many seasons now, coming into the EPL because it's totally a different tempo. Like the tempo is so different. But he sounds like a backup player in the long run, no matter what. The same kind of things we said about Joao Gomes. The same kind of things we've said about other players. He's not Baleba. He's not Elliot Anderson. He's not one of our main targets.
He would be a squad player.
Yeah, he would be a squad player. He'd definitely be a starter this season, though, right? Like he would bench cast this season.
To your point, Semeex, just to add, it's not just him coming from the Saudi league to the Premier League. Even his previous Premier League experience, since then, the league has gotten a lot better. Since he left the league as well. A lot faster, a lot stronger. So there's a lot of changes. And yes, he still plays for Portugal because the Portuguese national team still picks those players. That doesn't mean he knows what the tempo is necessarily. So there are some concerns. But James.
Yeah, I think the concerns you raised are the reasons it's not going to happen. When you look at their transfer strategy recently, Premier League. You look at the midfielders they want, Premier League. Warren Anderson, Baleba players.
What if it's dirt cheap though, James? What if it's under 20 million? Because Saudi league doesn't need money. So if they just want to get rid of someone, they might be like, 18 million will do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the factor that they're looking into it right now is that it seems like my impression is they're not going to sign someone. The money's not important. If they think they're going to be a key player of the squad moving forward, they'll take them. If they don't, then they won't, and I think like the money I'm not saying the money doesn't matter, but I don't think they're rushing into saying, yeah, we'll get somebody that could help us right now, but we're not convinced about in the long term and locking them up for 5 years. I just think that they're going to avoid that. That's why I think those types of deals aren't happening. Like a João Gomes where they do like him, but if he's going to be 60, 70 million, they're looking at him like not that convinced. He's not on the same level as these other guys to them. I don't think we're at the point in time in terms of rebuilding the squad where they want squad players, right? They want to buy starters and they want to push players to be squad players down and then replace them as needed. But they want starters. They want starters and young up and coming future star type of players. And they're pretty much balanced between those two. And if you look at most successful rebuilds, I think that's been the right way to do it. If you look at how Liverpool rebuilt their team, they bought really good established players, like great players in Alisson and Van Dijk and these guys at prime ages, or they bought young players and brought them through and up, and not much in between where you're saying, it's a guy that 2 years from now you're like, what the hell? Later on, you can add more depth, but I think we're still in the phase of like, if they're not a starter, they're not like 22, 21, looking like a great prospect, we're probably just not going to buy them.
I have a hot take, guys. I think the club is looking at Diogo Dalot and saying, let's improve this guy to be the starting left wing back that we need in the market, because he has the potential to do it. Like, physically, he's got a good Premier League body. He wins his aerial duels. If you look at his stats as well, like he's pretty good at those things. I think they're praying and hoping that Amorim can get a tune out of him by the end of the season, where the requests for the left wing back die down, and next season Diego Leon enters the first team fray as the next sort of wing back that can play on both sides, right? Because Diego Leon is left-footed. Yeah, so I think that's my hot take, which is they're trying to do that. And then I'm not saying they're not going to buy a left wing back, but they're going to buy somebody in the mold of can play across all 5 positions and is not a dedicated wing back. Because when I look at the league right now, I've talked about this player to death, but Chelsea's Malo Gusto is somebody I would love to go and get, right? Because he's built for like going, bombing forward, bombing back, and he's very good creatively, and he's also a winger, essentially playing at fullback for Chelsea. So that's my hot take. I think Dalot's the guy they're looking at, and Diego Leon gets bedded in next season.
So what I have to say about that is, like, after that post-match interview, I don't know when it was, but that press conference where Ruben Amorim talked about the academy players, and he had some, let's say some people thought some negative things to say about the academy players. I went and I watched Sheffield, is it Wednesday, where Harry Amos plays. Mm-hmm. On Paramount app, you can watch the Championship League, and I watched that, and I watched Harry Amos, and I got to tell you, I have not said anything positive about Harry Amos since preseason, since what I've seen before, and I'm telling you right now, that kid has improved. He's moving faster. He's making decisions quicker. He's very confident on the ball, and he's literally the best player on that team, which is a lot for a kid to do in that league, in that tough, fast league. Now, I honestly kind of want him now. I want him as our backup. So, we brought up Diego Leon being the backup, and I was like, man, this kid, if you haven't seen him play for his team, if you're in North America on the Paramount app, you can watch all the games. And just go and watch him play one game, and you'll see what I mean, because I was shocked at how much different he looked than what he looked like with us in preseason. He is in shape, he's in form, and he's doing great. Now, does that mean we actually use him as a bargaining chip and sell him for money? That could be a very big possibility too, because the academy is for both those things. Either you use the academy to raise money, or you use the academy to fill in spots.
And most players get sold or released, right? It's just one or two that come into the first team. I think so. Rishi had a hot take on this as well about the whole youth players thing, which is, I think Jason Wilcox has come to him and said, listen, man, you're not getting any players in January. And so we might just recall one of the youth players, and maybe Amorim was getting out ahead of it, giving his excuses about why he's displeased, about potentially having to use Amos instead of getting a new wing back. So you can look at it both ways, which is what Semeex is saying, because I don't understand why you would say something like that if you wanted to sell Amos, right? Why would you say he's not having a good time?
On X, just like 2 hours ago, there was a story posted on, there's 2 teams that are looking at Harry Amos for a January transfer. So that could be coming. And I wouldn't be surprised at all, because like I said, just watching, I only watched him play 2 games literally this last 4 days because of that press conference. And because I heard that Amos had like player of the team or whatever player of the month last month. So I was like, let me go see what this kid is doing. And I was actually enjoying watching the game, which is not normal for me when the team is so bad, because the kid was doing so well with every touch. So anyway, I kind of want to recall him, to be honest with you. But if we sell him instead and we use that money to get someone else, that's awesome too, right? Like that's.
Can I throw a player your guys' way as a potential option for the front 3, front 5 positions? Eli Krupi from Bournemouth. He's 19 years old. He's got a very good finish on him. He's very rapid as well. Transfermarkt has him at 22 million, but at his age, 50 million is the minimum of what he would cost. I don't know if he's the right player at the right time for us, but I do think in the next year or two, we will see him go to a different club, if not United, and do very well. Thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, he's a good player. He is. I guess it just depends, obviously, right now. I think you're right. Obviously, he's going to be one of those players who does take a step up at some point in the near future. Probably for United, I would say maybe we're not looking, in terms of attackers, we probably want him a little more, keeping up with getting a little more established for our options, right? Because we've already got a young striker in Šeško, and we can see that having proven forwards makes a big difference once they get going. So. But yeah, he was good against us, and he's a good forward, and certainly I think he's one to keep an eye on in the long term.
Anything to say about Harry Amos, James?
I think Ruben Amorim has a big, and so does Wilcox, and so do the people above, massive emphasis on physicality. And no matter what Harry Amos has improved, I still think anytime I've seen him,
he's small.
There's just no way, and he's not like Ahmad. He does not have the balance, the strength that Ahmad has as a smaller player.
Ahmad, pound for pound, is very strong.
Yeah, Ahmad's crazy in the way that he holds his body, and Ahmad lit up the championship. Like, it wasn't like just good.
Yeah,
he destroyed that league when he was there in Sunderland. Did incredible, and you could see it. Amos, I think, is a very good player, but he is small. He's not particularly fast or as strong as Ahmad would be. I think when you look at the side, the emphasis has to be on physicality because we're so weak still in a lot of areas on that basis, and we can't really afford it. That's why Diallo plays. Like Andy was saying, though, he does have a Premier League body, and he's very physical in that respect. He's very, very physical, and you can't fault him for that aspect of it.
Yeah, guys, I just want to give another shout because this transfer discussion is interesting to me. We can move on quickly. We don't have to spend too much time on it. But there's one player who plays in the Spanish league that I would love to get as an experienced striker to play, with Šeško, and that's Alexander Sorloth. He plays for Atletico Madrid. He's like 6'5", super physical beast, very good hold up play, and I think he's Norwegian. So, I think getting someone like him through the door could be perfect foil for Šeško to learn from, and also not have a big drop off next season. So just food for thought, guys. Maybe you can get in the comments with your reactions to that.
Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about before we wrap this thing up is basically the next 2 games, because I think we have 2 games before our next podcast. Guys, let's start with Andy first. Andy, tell me what you think is going to happen in the next 2 games. We got the AFCON, which is leaving us short of 2 players. We were going to talk about formations and how we've changed formations, and I was going to show charts of where we were and exactly like where our average positioning was, but this conversation was so smooth and cool that we kind of skipped over all that. But just give us a brief understanding of what you think is going to happen in the next 2 games.
So for me, just to quickly touch on the formation thing, I think the whole move to 4-3-3 or 4-4-2 is actually designed to fit Shea Lacey into the team over Ahmad, right? That is my best guess of what he's trying to do because of AFCON. Because who else is going to play on that right wing? I don't really know. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but let's see what happens. In the Villa game, I am actually predicting a draw. Because I don't see us adapting to losing 2 of our best players that quickly. And personally, based on the last few weeks of form, I think Ahmad is going to be a bigger miss than Mbeumo, just because of how well he's been playing, relatively speaking. And for the Newcastle game, I think this one's going to be actually after the next episode, but we'll still give our prediction here because it's on 26th and we're recording on Christmas Eve. It's going to be a huge physical battle, and Newcastle, for as bad or good as their season is, they always turn up against us, right? It's like that League Cup final or whatever final we beat them in. They still want to get their revenge, even though they beat us in the league right after that the next week. So, yeah, I think that one, I do predict a win in that one. So I'm saying 4 points from these two games.
James?
Yeah, I think similarly. I think though we could almost see the reverse again, just because United are such a weird team in this respect. I feel like Aston Villa have not been great. They've scored some wonder goals. That's the truth of it. Like, they're massively overperforming every metric, which is fair enough. Sometimes teams can do that, and Emery's kind of a master at doing that. He's done it his whole career. It's just what he does. But I feel like it kind of suits us. We've gone into Villa and played Emery a few times, and he's never been able to deal with us. Even when we were bad under Ten Hag, we kind of smacked him around a bit. So I feel like we might end up with a sneaky win there, but I don't think we can handle Newcastle's midfield. It just, they're so physical and fast in the middle. Even when they're not good, Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, we can't handle that. We've never been able to handle that. The game looks so bad when we play them because of that, largely, that we just don't have the pace, the power, the physicality to keep up with them in the middle of the park. But there's just nothing we can even do about it. There's no counter. We got to hope their forwards, who aren't that good besides Woltamata, are not producing, and that Elanga just keeps on his streak of not actually doing much for them. But yeah, I could almost see it reversed, but I'm also predicting 4 points. I think we'll win one and not the other, but I could see it being the exact other way around, because that's United, you know?
Yeah, I'm really worried. I won't lie. I'm really worried about what are we going to do without Ahmad and Mbumo. I have no idea what's going to happen. I have a feeling the front line is going to be Cunha, Šeško, Mount. And I don't know much else after that other than Diogo Dalot will be playing and Bruno Fernandes will be playing and probably Casemiro. But I think he's suspended the next game, Casemiro, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm not sure what's going to happen there either. And then the center back pairing, again, I am not sure what's going to happen there because both center backs proved that they're not really ready. They do make mistakes. They both have positives. They both know how to drive with the ball. They both... Lenny Yoro looked very comfortable playing as right back when he needed to rotate into that right back role when we stepped into a 4-4-2 or a 4-3-3. What's his name? Aiden Heaven looked really good on the ball, especially in the pressing positions, and also when he was being a little press resistant and driving with the ball. But both of them made, I'm going to call it fundamental mistakes when protecting channels. And then Licha also made a fundamental mistake protecting a channel. I don't know what's going to have to happen in the center back position. It worries the hell out of me. So I don't want to predict scores. And I'll tell you right now that if we got 2 draws, I wouldn't be too disappointed.
Yeah.
And that's just...
Especially with the 3 games coming after that, which are against Leeds, Wolves, and Burnley. We still have the opportunity to do well in these 5 games. But I just want to say, guys, speaking of 5 games, I had predicted 7 points in these stretch of 5 games that we've just had. And I recall some other folks on this panel predicting 11, 12, 13 points. And we ended up with 8 points. So, guys, get in the comments below. I think it's time to wrap
up this episode.
Yeah. Get in the comments below, guys,
I'm still
with your
looking
thoughts
for
on how many
20 out
points.
of 10. So 12 out of the next 5. That's where I'm aiming for.
I hope we get 12
So you think we're going to get 12 in the next 5?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll see. I've predicted 9 points on the Stat Patters episode that we've shot, but I haven't edited it yet. Rishi predicted 10. And Semeex, just quick thoughts on what you think next 5 games?
It'll be easier to predict once I find out who he's going to play instead of Ahmad on that right side. You're saying Shea Lacey, but if my hopeful self is saying 2 draws and then finally the people understand the patterns, because there's new players that are going to play that I haven't played, and there's a new formation that we're working on. So let's take 2 draws and then 3 wins. So
We
11
can't not
points.
beat Wolves, Leeds, and Burnley though. That
Exactly.
3-game
So-
stretch is our best bet
Dude,
at 3
Leeds
wins
beat
in the whole
Chelsea,
league.
drew to Liverpool,
Yeah, but it's
almost
Leeds.
beat
It's
City
Leeds.
as well.
It doesn't matter.
It's still Leeds,
they'll
and
do
we're
it.
Manchester United. Like they're our
They'll
rivals.
do it.
Like,
And
we-
Wolves
Okay,
and Burnley
okay.
are the easiest games you'll get all season by far.
Yeah, exactly.
We
Two
can't.
draws,
I'm gonna say the
3
same
wins.
thing. I'm gonna say the same thing I said the last time, which is, guys, I hope you are right, and I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see.
I hope I'm wrong, and then I'm going to rub it in your faces if I'm right 2 weeks from now, which is basically what you did.
Oh,
That-
let's see. I'm just saying, like, I hope I'm wrong, because I'm not getting any pleasure. The small pleasure I'm getting is that I was
Is
right
rubbing it
about
in
being
my face.
contrarian. No, not rubbing it in your face. That you can't expect this team to do the expected. That's what I'm saying. Like, beating Burnley, Wolves, and Leeds would be expecting us to do the expected, and
So
we've
then-
not proven to be that team.
So then you expect us to beat Villa and Newcastle.
That's why I predicted 4 points from those 2 games.
Oh, that's actually, yeah, okay. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Guys, I think this is where we wrap it up. I just want to thank everybody who's been watching this, and I want to tell everyone who's been watching this to go down into the description section of this video, where I'm going to put every one of our Discord links. Join our Discords, get involved in the conversations. Let us know what it is you want us to talk about in next week's episode, the Christmas episode of the Three Devils podcast. And again, I want to thank all of you guys, because you guys are the ones who made this happen. Your comments, you letting us know that you wanted to see more of us together, is what brought this podcast together. Thank you so much. The next episode is going to be on James's United Muppeteers channel. So do me a favor, make sure you're subscribed to all 3 of us, because these podcasts do rotate between all 3 of our channels. We all take a turn hosting, and this one was my turn. So thank you so much for clicking on the video and watching it. By the way, if you haven't used your hype yet, hype this video. It does so much more for us than likes do. And make sure that you hype all our individual videos if you haven't used your hypes and you're there at our lives or just watching our videos. Thank you so much, guys. We will see you next week. Bye.